From military history to life on the frontier, historians continue to uncover new pieces of Nebraska's past at Fort Robinson. On May 30th, a special presentation at the Fort Robinson History Center will explore discoveries from the past investigations and the ongoing work to preserve and interpret the site's history. My guest today to talk more about this is Nebraska State Historic Preservation Officer Michael Sothen. Michael, welcome to Friday Live.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to have you here during Preservation Month.
Yes, we're still in Preservation Month. The month of May is clinging on.
You even have an official proclamation here sitting next to you.
We do, yes. The National Historic Preservation Month has been around for a while, and we were really fortunate that the Governor Pillen also proclaimed May as Preservation Month here in Nebraska and being able to celebrate all that entails.
Okay. Well, since we're focused on Fort Robinson here this morning, give us just a brief rundown, an overview of the history of Fort Robinson.
Yeah. So Fort Robinson has a really long history. It's one of the longest serving military forts in U.S. history, and it was established as an encampment in the 1870s, 1874. And it evolved over time, largely there to try to support the Indian Agency, as they called it then, and had a very long history with the Indian Wars and a variety of other things there. But it continued to evolve past the Indian Wars and Red Cloud and Cheyenne Barracks and things like that. It ended up moving into just serving a variety of different uses. It was one of the main homes for the African American soldiers that joined the U.S. Cavalry. You have it was a remount depot, had trained a lot of the horses and things throughout World War I and World War II. It was a canine facility. A lot of the war dogs were trained there. It was a prisoner of war camp. A lot of activity there at Fort Robinson. And today it is a jointly run site by the Nebraska State Historical Society and Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, with lots of recreation and history opportunities.
Yeah, you mentioned folks who lived at Fort Robinson who were there as home of the Buffalo Soldiers, as they were called. I wonder if you could explain who they were and what role did they play at the fort?
Yeah. So the Buffalo Soldiers definitely hold a special place in U.S. history, and this is before the U.S. Army was desegregated. But the country wanted to give an opportunity for these soldiers. They had served very well during the American Civil War, and they wanted that ability to continue that on. And so the Buffalo Soldiers, and I believe it was the 9th and 10th Cavalry, I don't have that right in front of me, but they were the main units that served all across the American West, but often calling Fort Robinson home.
Super interesting history there. Some of the fort's history is honestly quite grim, especially involving Indigenous people. I wonder if you could speak to what challenges come from preserving and interpreting events that are both historically important but also deeply tragic.
Yes, that's definitely one of the challenges there at Fort Robinson, and is trying to tell that story. And it has continued to evolve a little bit as we continue to learn more and we gain new perspectives in on that history as certain people are asked to share their part of the history. We have seen that evolve. Our office specifically has been working with the National Park Service to update the National Historic Landmark nomination there that captures a lot of additional stories and additional context from the Native American side, from that Indigenous stories that have sometimes, we've usually told that more through the Euro-American lens. And so we've tried to change that a little bit to just make sure that we're telling that complete story. But there at that site, it has so many different stories to tell. And that is certainly a continuous work in progress. Archaeological digs, that this event will be focusing on some of those. Some of those are around the Cheyenne Barracks to over around the soldiers' barracks and things like that. So you're going to hear a little bit of that variety of history. But, just with our interpretive signage and the way we try to do archaeology, the way we're trying to tell that history and work on updates to the museum and the interpretation panels there, it's trying to be able to capture this both as the successes that the fort was, the tragedy that was there, and just how that changed over time.
I'd love to dig into that archaeological aspect of this. And I really didn't mean that pun to dig into, but there we are. What are some of the most interesting finds that have come out of that particular site, and maybe an example of how it gives us perspective on history?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question. And Kelly, who's the one who's going to be giving the program, has really dug into, again, no pun intended, into the archaeology there. She's actually been a part of some of those digs, but she's currently traveling through doing some work, some easement reviews out in the Sandhills and in the Panhandle. And so she's the one that's the archaeologist, one of our two archaeologists in the office that can really tell you more about that. And at her presentation on Saturday tomorrow, she'll be sharing that. So unfortunately, I'm more on the standing structure and on the history side of things, not the archaeologist. So I have to kind of pass that on to what will be there at the event. But we have found a variety of things. I mean, just memorabilia of daily life is oftentimes what comes to the surface. It's that button. Maybe it's a bullet, it's things like that. Especially some of them do have a tragic story attached to them. Some of them, it's just everyday life. It's just like, oh, hey, who lost their smoking pipe? Who lost this and that? But it still tells us something about the people that lived there, and just reminds us that these were people like us. We occasionally lose things too, and you kind of wonder, where does it go? And a few hundred years from now, someone might dig that up, and it'll tell a history about us here in this moment.
When you said that, I got to be honest, I thought I better be careful what I lose. Otherwise, there may be some things I don't want the future to know about me. But
well, there's that. But it's also kind of fun. We like to learn that way. It's
absolutely.
There's some things that aren't recorded in the history books that we have to find through other means.
I was just about to ask you why, since it's Preservation Month, it is important to preserve places like this, and you've kind of touched on that here.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea about historic preservation, some people maybe don't even know anything about it. Some probably think that, it's those people that try to just protect history or say no about things, but that's really not the case. We view historic preservation as a tool to tell community stories, as an economic development tool. A lot of people don't think of historic preservation as economic development, but we have aspects like heritage tourism, like out at Fort Robinson. But beyond that, when we're trying to preserve buildings, a lot of these are in downtowns, or they're just unique, maybe a corner, a residential neighborhood. These are places that people still live in today, that businesses still operate in, and they are just that unique. They give us this special feeling. Are places that have authenticity and history. Why do people talk about the Haymarket in Lincoln, or they remember their downtown? And so these are just places that have economic opportunity and have stories to tell that really connect us to place.
Michael, before I let you go, you are clearly passionate about history. If I could ask, how did you get involved in history?
So I got in history from a young age. I was started doing living history type things, volunteering at Fort Kearny, and worked at the Archway throughout high school and college, and then got into more economic development and historic preservation work, which has led me here. So I've been in the field, working in the field for about 19 years, and I've really enjoyed that.
The right man for the job.
Yeah. Before I go, can I mention that we do have one more event that's coming up?
Yeah.
So this one got postponed because of weather. We have an event at the Nebraska History Museum talking about the Kennard House on June 1st. And so it'll be, again, at the Nebraska History Museum. Don't try to go to the Kennard House, even though it's on the Kennard House. It'll be at the Nebraska History Museum there on Centennial Mall, across from the Children's Museum and the Federal Building, at 5:30. On Monday.
Okay.
So
Monday,
those
June
two events.
1st. Yeah, you brought in this amazing picture that I've seen before of the Kennard House, where there's no more of Lincoln around it. It's just by itself, which is amazing that how much the city has grown up
When
around it.
It was built in 1869. Lincoln was just an infant, that's for sure.
Pretty amazing. So events on both sides of the state to attend there. An event at the History Museum downtown, again, June 1st, 5:30 p.m. And if you're looking for more Nebraska history, the free presentation tomorrow is History and Archaeology at Fort Robinson on the western end of the state. That's at 11 a.m. at the Fort Robinson History Center. I've been speaking here this morning with Nebraska State Historic Preservation Officer Michael Sothen. Michael, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate the time.
Great discussion. Head to the Friday Live page for more information. That's at nebraskapublicmedia.org.